Hi, everybody. We're the Perspective Potterheads, Jenny B and Terri T, and we're here to discuss our favorite fandoms, starting with and primarily featuring Harry Potter content. And today we are going to focus on Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone. We're going to start with Chapter 1, The Boy Who Lived. We have both read the books and listened to the audiobooks and seen all the movies several times. So spoilers ahead.
Yes, very much spoilers ahead. So if you have not read them and want to read them and be surprised, this might not be for you.
So we just kind of took notes as things popped into our head, and we're just going to kind of discuss them page by page as it goes along. And we're going to wing it because this is our first time. So what's your first note?
My first note is regarding the character of Mrs. Dursley. I kind of went at this looking at characters and the development of the story and how this is going to play into long-term, because we know that this is a long-term thing for us. So my questions with Mrs. Dursley was just in my mind, I'm like, she's not that much older than Lily. Like, they were playmates. She can't be that much older. So, and we know that she gets very angry and very jealous that Lily goes to Hogwarts. So did she intentionally, my question would be, did she intentionally seek out someone who is so opposite, that has no tolerance for anything out of the ordinary, and arguably planted herself in a place where there was no tolerance for anything out of the ordinary?
It's a good question. Because she's so intolerant of everything, just wants somebody to connect with. I don't know if that's a good question. So getting to your age question, I imagine probably a good 2 to 3 year gap, probably.
That's kind of my thought. It's never, I'm sure if we looked into Pottermore, there probably would be able to tell us her age.
Yeah.
But I really do think that 2 or 3 years, I envision her age gap similar to my kiddo's age gaps. Yeah. So just in how she kind of mothers Lily, and all of her intolerance genuinely stems from jealousy, which is sad.
Yeah. I think that it not necessarily that she wanted to find somebody as equally intolerant, but somebody who was just normal. So, but then again, you might also think that somebody who seeks out being so normal and trying to maintain that status quo might be a person who is just naturally intolerant.
Because it's not, as you go through the books, that she's not just intolerant of magic. They're intolerant of lots of stuff. Harry talks about
those people wearing cloaks.
Yeah, really, I want to wear a cloak. Sometimes I do. Not a full-on cloak. It's more of a poncho, but change it up a bit. Sometimes coats are restrictive.
I read something, some blog, because I wasn't really sure as far as what a cloak is, because they're not very common in our society aside from what you see in Harry Potter. And somebody said when they LARP, they actually prefer the cloaks because they're warmer than a jacket.
Huh. I have a poncho-y wrap that I got. I actually bought it in Europe, but if I'm baby wearing, it's much easier to wrap than to put on a coat with the sling.
Yeah. I should wear my cloak more in the winter then.
It's much easier when you're baby wearing.
Yeah, I forgot my sling the other day because I had to put a coat on, and I'm just okay, putting things on.
And then you're stuck carrying baby and it's uncomfortable.
Yeah.
So what's your first note?
My first note is that it mentions that Petunia hadn't met with Lily for several years, and she pretends that she doesn't have a sister and doesn't want Dudley mixing with a child like that. And then I thought, well, that's if she's so dead set on not having a sister, not wanting her son, and then she gets this letter, which we'll get to later. And then she's just okay, come on in. And because I know that Vernon mentions later, something about, or maybe it was Aunt Marge, about leaving him to an orphanage.
Mm-hmm.
And why not?
Yeah.
Right off the bat, they say they want nothing to do with them. And so obviously there's got to be something deep down, surface level. She might not want to talk about it, But then again, if she does go through all of this stuff to try to ignore it, to seek out a mate that's, you know, that's so intolerant of all that stuff, I do think they say later that they want to squash it out of them.
Mm-hmm.
That takes effort.
Yeah.
So, and I mean, it's not like they treat him as if they are his. They still,
yeah, they treat him terribly.
Yeah, to try to squash that out of him. I don't think that's how you would do it.
I have 2 comments on that like go along with that. One, she hates her sister. She wants nothing to do with her, but she sends her a Christmas gift.
Yeah.
In the letter. And actually this was what I woke up to today, because I play the audiobooks at night, was Harry reading the letter. And it says that he smashed a vase that Petunia had sent her. Mm-hmm. So I was like, you really hate her. You hate her. You hate her. You hate her. But you sent her a Christmas gift.
And because it does say that she hasn't met with her, but that doesn't mean that they don't correspond.
Exactly.
Even, which is kind of weird, because you would think if you want nothing to do with your sister, you pretend that you don't have a sister, but you send her gifts, and so that there is some back and forth. And I actually had a note in here somewhere, not sure where because my notebook is filled, but in that letter that you referenced, when she's talking to Sirius, she mentions Petunia so offhandedly. Like, oh, it's that vase, the Petunia. So Sirius, she must have talked to Sirius about Petunia regularly enough to just be like, oh yeah, my sister. No, he knows her name. He knows that Petunia is her sister. So Lily still has that love for Petunia that she always sought after, despite, you know, when they were arguing when they were kids. So I don't know so much that if it was Petunia that was.
I wonder how much of it was Vernon.
Like maybe it was like Lily reaches out to Petunia, and then Petunia just kind of has to be better, so she wants to one-up her.
I also wonder where Vernon plays into this, because I think he is, of the 2, more intolerant in my mind. And I mean, I come from my family's a little bit different than what is the norm. I have very, very strong relationships with my siblings, but there's a bond there, regardless of whether you get along or you don't. There's a bond that's still your sister. So I think that kind of plays into it as well.
And just off the top of my head, when you were mentioning that, I was thinking like, there should have been kind of that bond between Harry and his aunt biologically. Like, why doesn't he go to her? And but then again, in that household, the way that everything has to be the norm, they're going to follow the patriarch.
Yeah.
So I guess that kind of, I worked that out.
Petunia demurs to Vernon throughout the series. Like, it's always like, if my husband, I don't care what's going on, if he's like, get in the car, we're going and driving around like a crazy, like, no, absolutely not. That's not how that works.
Right.
I'd be like, you're crazy. No, have fun. Bye.
So
like, I'm not getting in that boat. No.
So like my next thing kind of goes into like those gender roles and stuff like that, because while Vernon's getting ready for work and Petunia stays home and she's trying to get him dressed, I think it is, and he's having a temper tantrum, and because Mr. Dursley tries to give him a kiss goodbye and he's throwing that tantrum, and he's just like, chortles, little tyke, and like walks out the door. It's like, yeah, that's nothing for a dad. He can just leave. Mom's got to stay and deal with that all day. And McGonagall says he's kicking her up and down the street, asking for sweets. Like,
Dudley sounds like a terror.
Yeah.
An absolute terror. He needs some boundaries.
Yeah. I mean, like, and that's because that's just not normal for just any parent to be like, you're throwing a temper tantrum, I'm just going to laugh about it and go about my day. Like,
that is
as much patience as you want to have with your kid. Like, you got to get frustrated sometimes. Like, it's a frustrating process.
And I wonder if that's why Dudley is the way he is, because Vernon is like, oh, haha, so cute. And Petunia's like, done. Because it is a reaction. Like, if you aren't able to, like, it's easier to give in. Like, as a parent, sometimes it is easier to give in. Like, I want a fruit snack. 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 Fine, have a fruit snack. Leave me alone.
Yeah.
And not all the time, but sometimes you get to that point, especially if there's other factors, if there's other stressors.
Yeah.
And we don't know. I mean, Petunia is a fascinating character as far as like to me, like what motivates her. And I wish we could get a little bit deeper into what, like more of what she's thinking, but it's all very mysterious. Mm-hmm. Side note on that. Can you imagine Petunia and Vernon dating and Petunia having to have the conversation that, hey, so my sister's a witch, like legit witch.
Yeah. Like, how does that come up?
I don't know. Cause he
at their wedding
knows. And
at their wedding, and it would have to be where they try to have a normal muggle something. And then Lily or James does something weird. and then she has to be like, it's my sister. She's a witch. Like, I'm so embarrassed right now. I can't even.
Like, I can't even imagine how that conversation had to go and what like she had to do to convince him that she wasn't making that up. Yeah. Because he seems like, unless he saw it, he's one of those people that like, I have to see it. Mm-hmm. He can't imagine it. He doesn't approve of imagination.
Okay. I could totally see this now, because who's going to be there at Lily's wedding for James? You got Sirius. And okay. So those two at all, right? Mm-hmm. If they go to this thing, they're going to be wreaking havoc all over the place. And so he would have had to see something at some point. And if James did anything at Petunia and Vernon's wedding, then it would have been, they probably just would have had to obliviate everybody except for him, just so that he would know.
Mm-hmm. It's interesting to think about their wedding, because you would assume that most of the order was there. I mean, Dumbledore was probably there. McGonagall was probably there. They were a lot closer. Like, if from reading the chapter, you get the impression that Lily and James were close with Dumbledore. Mm-hmm. They were close with McGonagall. They were close with Hagrid.
Yeah. It's interesting that those two were, when they weren't even close to each other until like their 7th year. But then again, I mean, they did share like the common room and the tower and all that in classes together. So they didn't like knew each other well enough. Yeah. But still like that connection didn't really come until.
Well, and if you look at like the class sizes weren't very large. So you figure like with Harry, Ron and Hermione were kind of their group, but they were close enough to Lavender, to Pavarti, to Dean and Seamus and Neville. Like they still like they featured prominently in their daily lives. Yeah. Now, if Lily had been in, say, a different house, if she had been in Ravenclaw or had been in Hufflepuff, that might have been different. Mm-hmm. So I kind of skipped ahead a little bit on that, because we kind of discussed. Well, it's not even that far ahead. I like that the first sign of something peculiar, as it is quoted, is a cat reading a map. Yeah. And how does that even enter his head? And then I go, where'd she put the map? Because she was reading a map. Right. There was a map. Vernon didn't make that up in his head. McGonagall had a map, but I'm like, where'd she put it?
He doesn't approve of imagination. So
does the cat have a pocket? Like when she's an animologist, does she have a pocket?
Right. Where does her cloak go? I've never thought of that.
That they keep their clothes when they transform.
Yes.
That's kind of
like cool. in the Sookie Stackhouse series, when they transform into werewolves, they get naked.
I think that happens like the Twilight series, same thing. Like they explode into wolves and then they lose their clothes. So they have to like keep their clothes tied to their ankle. So yeah, they keep their clothes when they transform, which is kind of cool.
Yeah.
Like when she's fully magical.
Yeah. When she's reading her map too, I mean, you would think it would be a little suspicious because she's well aware of her surroundings. McGonagall's a very smart woman. Mm-hmm. So she knows that somebody's backing out of a driveway, driving down the street. And yet she's got this map in front of her, casually looking at it as a cat.
I can just see the cat like sitting up on its hind legs, map with her spectacle markings. I love
but then later she complains because everybody else is doing things to break, the wizarding code. And then she's like, it's fine that I have my map.
I was a cat reading a map to this morning. I also wonder, like, why did she need a map? there's no protective enchantments in place. So she could have apparated right to number 4. I rabbit holed a little bit with that one. Like,
Yeah.
You could have just apparated right to number 4.
Especially because she knew where she was going.
Mm-hmm.
I originally wrote down the note, how did she know where to go? But then it comes up later that Hagrid tells her.
Yes.
And so it's like, if Hagrid knew, does Hagrid know that it's number 4? Does he just know it's Privet Drive? Does he like how? So, and even then, how's a map going to help you navigating when you can just apparate?
Yeah, I was a
And
little
she's looking
confused.
and then she's reading. No, cats can't read maps or signs. When she's looking at the sign, then she's obviously like, she's like, oh, I looked at the map and now I look at the sign after apparating here as a cat. Or maybe she lives in the neighborhood or was already in the neighborhood with somebody else, because when she leaves as a tabby around the corner, opposite of the direction here Dumbledore comes in.
I had not thought about that, but yeah, maybe she was already in the area. But interestingly enough, and this is
still apparated though.
This is my next note.
Okay.
Is all these people in cloaks. There are no wizards that live nearby. They say that clearly in book 5. They kept very close tabs on that because of Harry. And they didn't just be like, hey, we're putting Harry Potter here. All y'all need to move. I don't think they did that. But there are no wizards. So where are all these people coming from? And why are they congregating in Little Whinging?
So Vernon does drive to work and he does get stuck in the traffic jam, which makes me think it's a whiles away from their house. So they're congregating in the city, but I also had to ask that question too. Why aren't they congregating in Muggle, or why are they congregating in Muggle areas? Why aren't they in wizarding areas?
Well, and here's my thought process. He has about approximately, this is my estimation, again, guessing, because it talks about what time he leaves in the morning and what time he goes home. He comes home at 5 o'clock and it says let me find it. I want to make sure I'm quoting myself. It's at 8:30. So he works a 9 to 5.
Yeah. So it's only a half-hour drive to work.
Mm-hmm. And there's traffic. So it can't be that far.
Yeah.
And I'm not familiar enough with the geography of England to know.
Yeah, me neither. And I don't think it necessarily says where what city he works in.
Mm-mm.
Just that he drives the daily commute.
Yeah, which is I would guess approximately a half an hour. Because he doesn't strike me as the type that would be late to work. Right.
I don't think so. One of my things about McGonagall is she has these, the distinct markings on her eyes, right?
Mm-hmm.
But how distinct would they be? Because if Vernon is driving down the street, looking at a cat, seeing a map, that map is the thing that's throwing him off, not necessarily the markings on his face, because I love cats and we get strays all around here. And if I see another cat come up and it's like, oh, I recognize you, not because of the markings that you have, but because you're a gray, thin, you're this big, you're that round, you're, you know what I mean? You're fluffy or you're short haired, not because of the markings.
Yeah. Like I have a tortoise shell calico. I've seen 2 other tortoise shells in the area. And the first couple times I saw them, I'm like, oh, my cat got out. Because all I see is it's a tortoise shell calico. I mean, obviously, if you look closely, her younger, like the mom that we got her from had another litter and there was another tortie and we gave her to a friend. The markings are different, but if you glance at them, again, as you're driving past, you're going to think they're the same cat.
Right. I mean, like, why is
she's
it like
Tabby? How distinct are her markings on her eyes? Because you'd think she's got.
They must be very distinct if he's driving, which it did say he was at the corner, so he might have had to stop.
Mm-hmm.
But still, even then, to just glance over, see a cat, maybe do a double take, to not just be like, when you come home, oh, that's clearly the same cat because it's a tabby.
I mean, like, it would be, especially if there's not a lot of stray cats, like around where I live, there's tons of strays, tons of outdoor cats. It's very country. We've got lots of cats. So I wouldn't know if that's the same tabby that I saw down there or over there.
Yeah.
But if there's not a lot of cats, it might be a logical jump to say that's the same cat.
Right. But I'm just saying, like, because he only knows that it's the same one because of the markings.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, I don't see that their area having a lot of strays.
Yeah.
Because I don't think that the Dursleys would live in a place with such nonsense. But so to me, it's like, I don't know. It's just a weird comment. It's just a weird description to me. Mm-hmm. So, and also he's like, Dumbledore does mention that he's never, and this is a little bit later, but my cat Zelda is what I imagine McGonagall to be. She's a tabby, and she sits just so upright and stiff. And I've taken several pictures of her like that because I swear she's McGonagall. She doesn't have the markings, though. That's the only reason I know she's not.
My gray tabby is that way. She's very prim, very proper. When she walks, she has like these dainty little steps, whereas my other cat is like, whoa! Yeah, that's how she moves all over.
This could be one of those things where, again, Rowling just like makes like one comment at one point, and then she's like, I'm going to make that something that means something later. I'm going to mean that those markings have to be prominent enough because of
her being an
animagus. Yeah.
So that's interesting. Like that, I think her markings become significant. And again, this is you mentioned this before we started recording. Like she mentions there's a lot of content in here that stems like those markings and being able to turn into an animal. Like that is a whole thing in book 3. You don't see it again until book 3. Actually, a lot of the stuff in this chapter relates to book 3, which I cannot wait to get to and discuss because that is my favorite. 2 of my favorite characters, like just all good things in book 3.
So with all the weird stuff going on and Petunia being a gossip, how is she not in the know that things are crazy?
I had that down here. I'm like, wouldn't she be suspicious of the owls? At least like she had to know what owl post was.
Right. Absolutely. That was.
And she's just like, but then again, I know people who are very good at doing this.
Yes. But not Petunia. She has twice the amount of neck to crane and spy on the neighbors.
But I think she can put blinders on when she wants to. She does not want to see it. So she can.
Yeah. Either because I do have this too. If she's so set to ignore the wizarding world or pretend that it doesn't exist, like that even when Vernon asks her about it, she doesn't want to. She's just too in denial that anything is going to happen.
Just says no. Yeah.
And maybe it emotionally hurts her so much that she still didn't get to go to a wizarding school, that anytime she sees that stuff, she's just like, if she actually pays attention to it, it just hurts her so much inside.
It emotionally hurts me that I didn't get to go to wizard school.
I know. I feel her pain. I'm just not as bitter, I guess.
So again, some of the things that strike me, because I really like literature and stuff like that, is writing style. And I have yet to find somebody's writing style that I like as well as Rowling's. She has a good flow, a good cadence, and she loves to put in these little plugs. And like you said, like that won't show up. But I think my favorite line of all is, I thought I underlined it. There we go. Hang on. Sorry, I was looking at the wrong page.
Sorry.
So he couldn't see how he and Petunia could get mixed up in anything that might be going on. He yawned and turned over. It couldn't affect them. How very wrong he was. Love that. Like, just your sense as you're reading this, you're like, oh, what's going to happen next?
Yeah. Especially first time readers. What's next? I mean, I guess everybody knows that Harry's a wizard based on the cover art, but still, like, how it unfolds.
But I remember reading this, and I can give you the setting of the first time I ever read this book. I was not going to read Harry Potter. It was hyped. And that was just not me. I was in 7th grade. It had come out a little bit before that, but I was in 7th grade, and I was like, I am not reading this. I also have a problem where I cannot resist reading a book if it's been put under my nose. So we were in choir class. The teacher was out. In choir class, when you have a sub, especially a sub that doesn't sing,
right,
you get a study hall. And
Oh.
I had not anticipated having a study hall because I did not know that the choir teacher wasn't there. And I had a friend. She was in 8th grade because it was 7th and 8th grade choir. And she says, I have an extra book here.
Nice.
And I remember the bell ringing and going, wait. So yeah, that I can vividly remember. And I wish, like, I love the rereadings. I've reread, I've listened to, multiple times, but the magic of that first time.
Mm-hmm.
And it's amazing.
When Harry Potter came out, I was in 9th grade and I didn't want to get into it. It was hyped. It was way hyped.
Everybody was
and I just didn't want to jump in on the trends, whatever. It'll fade. Although I jumped on every other trend. So it just wasn't for me at that time. And then when I was graduating, going to college, they had a scholarship essay contest. And you can write it on Harry Potter or something political. And it was like, well, I don't know anything about politics, so I'm going to write it on Harry Potter, but I'm not going to read the book. I'm going to watch the movie. And so I wrote my essay on the movie. I didn't get the scholarship, it's whatever, but I watched the movie over and over and over and over and over again. And I eventually started really liking it because of all the analysis that I was doing on it. And the movie is very similar. That movie in the Harry Potter series is very similar to the book. And I just kept watching the movies until the 3rd one came out. And what my friends who had read the books were like, there are slight differences and I'm not happy with them. And I think that's but I think by the 4th one, I think when the 4th movie came out, that's when I actually started reading the books. And by the time the 5th book came out, I was at the midnight premiere.
I remember going and getting the books at midnight for books. I know for sure 5, 6, and 7 we got at midnight. I'm pretty sure I got 4 pretty close to when it came out. I remember going to see movie number 4 in theaters and going, there's no way. My, at that time, fiance, now husband, refused to go to the movies with me. He took me to go see book 3 in theaters. And he says, I will never spend money taking you to go see one of those ever again. It was awful. Because all I did the whole time was complain.
Oh, I don't think I got too bad about it until the 6th movie.
Oh, the 3rd. That, again, special place in my heart, favorite book. They wrecked it. But we digress.
We did. But you were talking about how the writing style is. And I actually kind of noted like a little bit of her, like the scene that she set for them. The day is gray, and this whole first part she's talking about Vernon, and everything just seems gray, dull, boring. And then it's like the cloaks, they're not black, they're violet, they're emerald. Green.
And even her choice, they're not just green, they're emerald. They're not emerald, purple, they're violet. Like,
yes.
You have this vibrant picture of this dull gray, morose, and then you've got these pops of color.
Yeah. And even like it's not Vernon and Petunia. And I think even in later chapters, it's Uncle Vernon and Aunt Petunia. But in this chapter, they're Mr. and Mrs. Dursley. Like, they're prim and proper, like, and you better address them as such. So I just thought that their titles, aside from when they talk to each other, they're always just referred to as Mr. and Mrs.
Dursley. Yeah. It's interesting. And to go along with that, actually, your thought kind of flows into my next note. And all I wrote in my notes is, I love Rowling's introduction of Dumbledore.
Yes.
I did, and just, again, with the writing style and the way she says, nothing like him had ever been seen before. Like, everything from his name to his shoes is unwelcome. Like, the mental image that conjures up. And I'm probably giving myself away as a complete and total nerd, but that sort of stuff is like super exciting to me. I love a well-written passage. I love something that can really conjure in my mind how strange and how different.
Yes. And I think that the movies did a really great job portraying him. Whenever I read the boots, though, and I think it's because we can't see them because the cloak goes all the way down to his feet, but the boots are what gets me. The description on the boots, high-heeled and buckled boots. I'm like, huh? Like, are they platform high heels? Do they actually have like the stiletto heel?
See, I always picture them as like witches' boots. Like with the big silver buckle. And that's in my mind, the image it conjures like a witch's boot.
Okay.
And I love that he wears high heels. Like that just to me it's so Dumbledore. Yeah. And the other thing with Rowling is her attention to detail in describing her characters. There's several characters that wear glasses. Mm-hmm. They are all different. And we know the distinctionness of their glasses. Like McGonagall's aren't even referred to as glasses. They're her spectacles. I
thought they were called, well, a few times I think they mention them as glasses.
I always
and then other times spectacles.
But I always, whenever I hear her, it's like
I know. I think spectacle too.
And
that's what pops in my head.
Later, Rita Skeeter, her foul glasses. Mm-hmm. Like just in my mind, I can always conjure these like big gemstone-y, obnoxious things.
Here we go. I don't know if those are her glasses or not. They're not even Luna Lovegoods, but they look so close to Luna's.
Those are Luna's.
Yeah. Well, they're technically not, but they looked a lot like them, which is why I bought them.
Wow. That's exactly what I thought they were. Luna, interestingly enough, when you talk about character development, and Rowling has phenomenal character development. Each character is so unique, but they're also human that you can relate to them. Like none of those characters, even arguably very evil characters, there is something in them that you can say, oh, I get that. That's a person, or you can relate them to somebody that you know. Mm-hmm. That's a talent. She's an incredibly, incredibly talented writer.
I think we're going to get there more when Harry comes into the picture, because I see a lot of that in Harry.
Especially not even so much in the earlier books.
Right. Like, definitely more later.
Yeah. Like book 5, I don't love. I will be honest. Like that's probably my least favorite.
Yeah.
But the character development for Harry is so critical. Like he has to have that angsty, angry phase, especially given everything that's happened to him in his life. Like,
right.
I'd be angry.
And the movies they erase that. They erase the human side of him. They just make him totally pure. He's always, even when he's frustrated, it's not as deep as it goes into the books.
Yeah.
And the mild thing in this book, I think, is like when Hagrid gives him a cake in the movie, he says, thank you. And in this, he wanted to say thank you, but he's just like, who are you?
Who are you?
Like he didn't say it.
I'm like, yay, a cake. What in the world is going on?
Yeah, he's a kid and he's 11 years old. Like give him a break. Let him be flawed. Mm-hmm. We all are.
The flaws, I think, and she's, she develops those flaws beautifully.
Yeah. Okay. Dumbledore. This is one of those things I'm going to note throughout this whole thing because it changes all the time. Dumbledore apparates without a sound. He just appears suddenly. And then later in the books, we know the apparition comes with that pop. And depending on, and different people pop at different levels. Mm-hmm. Sometimes
it's very loud when a house elf disapparates.
He cracks. He doesn't pop, he cracks. And so it's like, why do some make a crack? Why do some pop? Why do some not? Snap, crackle, pop. Are they Rice Krispies?
To jump ahead, I'm wondering if Dumbledore cast the Muffliato spell. Because...
Can you do that before you get somewhere?
I don't know. Or as you're doing it? I'm not sure. But what strikes me is this is a very quiet, quaint neighborhood. Hagrid shows up on a flying motorcycle, a loud one.
Yes.
Don't you think like half the neighborhood would, like, I don't care if you've clicked the deluminator, put her outer thing multiple times. People's going to be like at their windows if they hear a motorcycle. Like if I hear loud noises on my street, I'm like, meh.
And I would assume that the motorcycle would have a headlight on it.
Yeah.
It does in the movie, right?
And I know like you wouldn't see the headlight flowing down the street because he just boom.
Does he just boom?
Yeah, he just because they say they
Oh.
look for the headlight and he just boom.
Oh, okay.
That's kind of
I missed that.
Yeah, he comes from the sky.
When so like this is one of those things like I guess I'm getting back to Dumbledore. When he arrives and he puts the lights out, those go out with a small pop. But speaking of the way that things come from, it because in the movies they zoom towards him, which is like, well, if anybody's looking out their window, that's gonna draw attention. Where'd that light go?
Where did the light go? Why are the lights out? I mean, I'm guessing
like,
it's very late at night.
But in it's just before midnight. Because I think that mentions it with somewhere in there around page 8. I know it's in there somewhere. I read it because I was thinking about what day is it, and I'm gonna get to that question.
Oh,
soon.
it was nearly midnight before the cat moved at all. You're right.
Yes. So some people got to be up at like 11 o'clock at night, right?
I know, and especially
looking around, and especially if you're like just walking by and you see the light go out, that might draw your attention to the window, and then you see all the other lights going out.
And knowing what I know about European culture, like at least, and again, I lived in Italy for a little bit. Like the bedtime, like dinner wasn't until 8 o'clock, so you were just up later.
But it says that the lights go out with a pop, which means in my mind, when I read it, they go out like this, but not like in the movies, like that. But then when he releases the put outer, which is called a put outer now, but a deluminator later, it says it sped back. So that makes it sound like they pop out, but then they fly back to their. So I don't know. It's weird.
Discrepancies.
Yes. Okay. I tore this thing apart, like every single like little thing when he arrived and he's talking to her because he apparated. Mm-hmm. He just appeared out of nowhere. But it said he mentions later that he passed feasts. How do you pass feasts?
Did he apparate or did he was he doing something? I'm not really sure, but you're right. He did. He passed feasts and parties. Yeah. And if you can just apparate anywhere because they don't have any barriers, why couldn't he apparate directly to number 4? And we know apparition is dark.
Yeah.
Because Harry describes apparition. So did Dumbledore fly? Can he fly without a broom?
I don't know. Or maybe he came in with like wearing like a disillusionment charm and then just like lifted it right before getting to the house,
because he can cast a disillusionment charm that renders him invisible. We know that later in the book.
Yeah.
So I don't really know. That's all. Just there's some like it's interesting, like as the books have been written, you notice things in these earlier books, like in Chamber of Secrets, Percy takes away points.
Yeah.
And that's something that prefects can't do. So there's some things that like just, and you'll have that as a series develops. There's going to be some inaccuracy, some things that you can't take it back. Right. It's happened.
Yeah. But, and I know we're going to come across a lot of those.
But I think that's what, again, makes it more interesting. Gives us things to question, gives us things to look at and think about. And again, I like to comment on kind of the literary stuff. I love the juxtaposition of McGonagall versus Dumbledore. McGonagall is this severe, like hair pulled back tight bun, the spectacles, the, stiffness of her, the stern looks, even as a cat, which I think a cat is a perfect thing for her because cats are like that. Most cats. You get some goofball ones. I have a goofball one, but cats are just typically, you think of cats as a little more standoffish.
Yes.
As opposed to Dumbledore, who's got his lemon drops in his pocket. And he's just like, really relaxed, really laid back, which is something I appreciate with Dumbledore. and I think Harry says this in, I believe it's book 6, how Dumbledore, while more intimidating, invites confidences, whereas
Yes.
McGonagall doesn't. McGonagall's more in the line, I think, of the Hermione, that it's this very, very structured.
I noticed at one point, I think it's on page 11, and I don't remember what he says, but he says something calmly, and I just marked in here that it's a good thing that Richard Harris was the Dumbledore in this. Otherwise, he would probably be charging down McGonagall and shaking her. So
I like how, like, their interactions, like when he says, "Would you like a lemon drop?" and she's like,
"Oh, what?"
I said, "No, thank you." And you can just hear it in her. And I know we're not getting too much into the movies, my movie knowledge is very, very limited because I've not watched them very often. But
right, me neither.
Maggie Smith could not have, you couldn't have picked anybody better. Like, she just has that McGonagall air to her, and I love it.
He doesn't offer her a lemon drop in the movie, does he?
I don't think so.
I didn't think so.
I don't know. It's been a really long time.
But
I
watch the movies at the end of the book.
Yes.
Yeah.
She didn't, but I was like, it's like she didn't think it was the time for lemon drops, which arguably, like, she's waiting there to find out, like, has the state of war been lifted? Yeah. And are two people that I'm close to dead?
Everybody's celebrating, and she can't even celebrate with a lemon drop.
Yeah, because she needs the answers. And that, again, I Hermione maybe not as sharp, but that is very much that trajectory. I think Ron and Harry soften her quite a bit, but very much in that same kind of mold.
I'm not too much on the Pottermore, but I do watch other channels that do. And there's some backstory to McGonagall and like a Scottish lover or something like that. So McGonagall takes like that lone wolf path. But that kind of goes back to what you were saying about the cat, because cats are very independent, like standalone creatures sometimes.
Yeah, I don't need you. I'm a cat.
Yeah, I don't need you.
So with their interaction, I think they finally get to the meat of it. Like, this is why she's been sitting here all day. This is how she, like, I need to know. And it is, there's before they even get to it, there's like the whole conversation, like, can't you call him by his name?
Yes. Now, that was one of my notes, and it irks me. And again, this is one of those things where I think that she didn't know where it was going to go yet, because he tells her to call him by his proper name, which, I mean, granted, they're 11 years into this wizarding war, but in the 6th book, he refuses to give Tom Riddle power by calling him Voldemort. And when did he shift from calling him Tom Riddle to going by Voldemort?
And in any interaction he has with Voldemort, and I love that Harry picks this up in book 7, but in those interactions, like those times that you see Dumbledore interact, like in book 5, he calls him Tom to, like, as a, like they don't, he does not give that name to him in person. But I would guess, like, everybody refers to him as you-know-who or Voldemort. So that would be.
So I guess that, like, is by saying Voldemort getting the power away from just the you-know-who. So just taking it in a step in the right direction. Because if you say Tom Riddle, everyone's like, who's that? Who? But if you can't say Voldemort, then it's like, because I guess that's the thing with him, is when he says, call me Voldemort, and then he's like, no, I'm going to call you Tom. And then he's like, fine, call me, don't call me by my name. Like, I don't know, when Prince turned his name into a symbol, what do you call him? And then, so whatever. And then he who must not be named, you-know-who. And then it's like, well, I'm not going to call you that. So now I'm going to call you this.
I think, like, the whole thing around that is the fear, and that fear, the fear of a name. And it interests me McGonagall is incredibly brave. Incredibly so, I feel, and just as a character.
And she's in the order.
Yeah, and you know
and
that
a lot of the order members say it.
Remus, Sirius, they call him Voldemort. They do not refer to him as you know who.
Yeah.
It's something that strikes Harry initially about Lupin.
Yeah. Well, she does say his name. She does, doesn't she? Doesn't she say,
she does.
All right.
Says, all right, Voldemort. But she refers to him as you know who typically. The other person who refers to him as you know who, while we're on this, Moody.
Is it Moody as Moody or sorry, Moody
as
Moody, or is it
Moody as Crouch calls him the Dark Lord, which we should have been suspicious of all along. Because
when we get to that book, I'm going to pay attention.
Because, and I know there's been a couple of conversations where he called him the Dark Lord, and it strikes me because that even Harry pulls out later when discussing with Snape. I think it's during Occlumency. Tell me, why do you refer to him as the Dark Lord? I've only ever heard Death Eaters calling him that. And of course, like the Harry Snape relationship, we'll have to get there. We will get.
We'll just do a whole character evaluation on Snape separately.
We could talk for hours.
We could. I definitely a random note in here about Dumbledore's pocket watch because it's got the planets alongside of it.
She never explains the pocket watch, but that's the same kind of watch that Harry gets.
Is it? So I don't remember exactly what kind of watch Harry got, but I was just thinking, like, because she said it must have made sense to Dumbledore because he said Hagrid's late. But I'm just thinking at some point, I want to say it was in the 6th book when he's talking about the divination and all that stuff. Mm-hmm. And he says it being a harder subject than he could have expected, having never studied the subject himself.
That's interesting.
So if he'd never studied divination, then how can you read and I mean, it could be a totally different system, but I would just assume since there are planets moving around that it would have something to do with astrology, divination.
It could just be astronomical, like, like reading the stars. So astronomy, and everybody studies astronomy.
Yeah. But isn't that part of the divination class?
No, astronomy is separate.
Okay. That's the class that's taught by Sinestra, isn't it?
Yes.
Okay. I just know that they study reading the stars with Trelawney.
Yes, they do.
Astrology and astronomy.
Similar,
I don't know.
Yet separate.
Yeah.
And apparently Trelawney's version of astrology is very different than the Centaur's version of astrology.
Yes. All right. Here's the big question. Are you ready for the big question?
Ooh, I like big questions.
Okay. So, Voldemort attacks Harry on the 31st. How do people know what went down? I assume it has something to do with the Fidelius charm breaking. I guess there's a lot of questions in this. So hold on. So how do people know that the Fidelius charm breaks and then everybody can just see their house again? But what happens when like say Bathilda Bagshot, she knows where they live. So can she just come and go anywhere because she already previously knows where they live? Can anybody do that?
I don't know.
But here's that's just like kind of a side note to the big question. So everybody can see their house. I think Hagrid mentions that you can see the house and blast it apart and Harry lay in there. And where's Voldemort? Was Voldemort's body there? I know there's a lot of questions about what happens to his wand and who picks that up, because if Hagrid was the first person there, for one, I guess who would have called to get Hagrid to go there to begin with?
And why did Dumbledore send Hagrid and not go himself?
And when did Hagrid have enough time to tell McGonagall in between all this where he was going to be going?
And so Harry's just laying there while they're all sorting this out, because Hagrid gets Harry. And
this doesn't, and the contents of this chapter don't even take place until the next day because people are out celebrating on November 1st. So what's Harry doing from whatever time Voldemort goes on the 31st until nearly midnight o'clock on November 1st? There's probably a good at least 24 hours.
The timing, and this is again a flaw in the writing. I do not criticize because I do
Style and loopholes are two different things.
Yeah, like, but they said famous before he can walk and talk. He turned 1 on July 31st. This happened on October 31st. I would hope he's walking.
Yeah.
I'd be concerned as an early educator. I'd be concerned if the child was not walking. Talking, okay, but
right.
He's,
well, maybe they mean like walk, the gait is different.
But he's, you wonder, like, the timeline doesn't always line up with,
and
especially like even in the letter in book 6, like for Harry's birthday, how long? And it says, but in book 3, they say that only a week after the Fidelius charm was performed.
Yeah.
So there's this timeline. I get it, but there's something that doesn't always line up, which is, again, if you're not dissecting it, nobody really notices, but
right.
if you've read it.
I would assume one of the first things that you do, now I know like the order probably has stakeout. So maybe like Bathilda is like walked by her window and she sent a message to Dumbledore somehow.
The talking Patronus? Possibly.
And
Bathilda's very powerfully magical as well.
And then Dumbledore said, Hagrid, you better get over there. And then Hagrid stops off at the pub first to tell McGonagall like what's going on.
It's October 31st. They're all Halloween. At Hogwarts.
They're all at yeah.
So how did McGonagall get somewhere separate from Dumbledore? And who's teaching lessons? It's a Tuesday. Like, did she just go, we're not having Transfiguration today?
Yeah. Now I have more questions. Like, you really can't.
It doesn't make sense. You can't answer.
What if because of the war, they shut down Hogwarts?
I don't think so. Because they
mentioned several times that there's the threat to possibly shut down Hogwarts.
But I don't think they ever did. I don't know. That's an interesting, like that just kind of like, it's a Tuesday, a random Tuesday. And I don't know anything about how trick or treat works because they do talk about Halloween. So I know like here. So you would imagine like have it the weekend before, except for where I live. And it is on Halloween night. It doesn't matter if the kids have to get up and go to school the next day. Teachers love it.
So I guess we have no answers for that aside from
just food for thought. If somebody has an answer, put it in the comments because
we might have to do like a theory around that at some point on what the thing happens, because I would assume that right behind the order would be the Ministry of Magic, because all this stuff would have to go down overnight for people to be celebrating and hear about it probably from the Daily Prophet the next day. Yeah. And then all right.
That's all kind of very murky.
It is very, very murky.
So my next kind of thought was in the conversation with Dumbledore and McGonagall, just as a side note, this is probably a smaller point than I think. Voldemort has powers I will never have. And
only because you're too noble to use them.
Exactly. But we do know that he dabbled in the dark arts.
Yeah.
But again, I don't know how dark arts it got.
Right.
Like, him and Grindelwald were not making Horcruxes. Like, that was not a thing. Like, yes, they thought we need to overturn the Statue of Secrecy. And we can get into this. This is, again, a later book discussion. I feel like Harry's anger at Dumbledore casts a shadow on it. Like, if you were to look at it a little more objectively, he's 17. He's just lost his mother. Mm-hmm. He has the weight of this secret with his sister.
And then all of his hopes and dreams to travel the world. I mean, he's pretty much George Bailey.
And the thing that I think gets ignored and that we learn later is that there was a more of a bond with Grindelwald than just a friend.
Yeah.
There was a romantic interest. And 17-year-olds do stupid stuff.
Yeah.
17-year-olds in love do even more stupid stuff. So I wonder, like, Dumbledore is arguably a more powerful wizard than Voldemort. But I don't think, as much as we kind of like, that question kind of popped in my head, well, does he, he did dabble in the dark arts.
Yeah. It's weird to me that he blushes when she says that, though. Like, instead of like him internalizing like, you're too noble, and like taking like that reflective, oh, if only you knew, he blushes. Like, I mean, either that or he doesn't blush because it's too dark for her to see, and he just says that he's blushing. I don't know. He's complex.
He is. And Dumbledore is a fascinating character. And the thing is like, I can't say that there is a character that is just that doesn't have, well, Umbridge is not a complex character. She's just evil.
Yeah. I'm not so sure that characters. I'm not sure how complex Hagrid is either. Hagrid is just like that good-natured blabbermouth. And that's like already, like, I mean, this, like, and it's set up in this chapter easily enough. Like, just, we know how many times is it? We should probably get a counter on here somewhere to tally how many times Hagrid like let something slip because he's drunk at the pub. So like,
I'll never drink again.
So like, I mean, Dumbledore's like, I suppose Hagrid was the one who told you I was coming.
And
like,
Dumbledore knows.
He knows. Like, everybody knows. And like, when he hiccups when they do the Seven Potters thing, like, everybody knows.
But
like,
it actually wasn't.
Wasn't it though?
No, the Snape.
But I thought there was like another piece of detail that he got from Hagrid in order to figure out when they were moving him.
He confunds Mundungus.
Okay.
And that's why Mundungus suggests the Seven Potters, because Snape has to give the correct date.
Yes.
But if there's only one Harry, Voldemort's going to get him. So that's how they do the Seven Potters. Interesting. And I like how Dumbledore, even the portrait's like, try confunding Mundungus. That'll work.
Okay, so Dumbledore has it all figured out, right? No, this is the other like, what the hell is going on? Dumbledore literally sent Hagrid in to get this baby because Hagrid describes the house and stuff like that. So, and then he had no idea how Hagrid was supposed to be getting there, apparently, because it wasn't supposed to be by the bike, because he says, where did that bike come from? Like,
this piece,
who lent you that bike? And if he's close to Sirius, then how does he not already know that was Sirius's motorbike?
One, that's true. Dumbledore, I think, pretends he doesn't know stuff a lot.
But I feel like in the future of these books, it's for Harry's benefit that he's pretending to not understand. At this point, why?
Then there's no reaction to, I got it from Sirius Black. Wouldn't you be like a little bit like, because Sirius Black is the bad guy. He is the bad guy. Like,
because when at this point does he track down Wormtail?
He's probably on his way to.
Yes, because he gets the bike and says, I won't need it anymore. And that's probably when he goes to hunt down Wormtail. So he's not the bad guy yet because he hasn't killed all those people. But he
is the bad guy. He was supposed to be the secret keeper. He has betrayed them to Lord Voldemort. He is already the bad guy. And Dumbledore knows that. But
it was a secret that he wasn't the secret keeper.
Yes. So he's not the bad guy. And like, again, okay. Back up. That was probably a little confusing. Okay. So he is the bad guy in everybody's eyes. Like, Dumbledore knew he was supposed to be the secret keeper. So, and Dumbledore gives evidence to the Ministry about that.
True. But does Hagrid know that he's...
Hagrid says he does not know.
Yeah. So Dumbledore might internally just being like, aha, well, everybody else is like kind of not knowing what's going on, that he was the secret keeper. Because I would think that even if you're a secret keeper, you want to keep the name of the secret keeper safe. So
they're not tortured into giving away the secret. But that really, like, and Dumbledore does tend to have a more calm demeanor, but like, I'd be like, Sirius Black? Wait, where'd you see him? I'd be trying to get a little more info.
And I even fit on that bike. I know it's a big bike, but I can't. But it's a Muggle motorcycle. Now, unless they're able to do like that extension charm, like they do on the back seats of cars,
Yeah, I kind of thought that too. Like, even if it's a big bike, like my papa had a big bike. He had an ultra classic. But even that, like, if you're a big, like even like big guys, like my cousin Randy on his bike, he looks big on his bike. Like, how does that, like, how did he fit?
Yeah, I'm gonna guess that they're gonna use magic as the escape clause here.
Yeah, I thought that too, though. I was like, how does he fit on that motorcycle?
Right.
So this delves into a little bit of a deeperness of this question that I have next. McGonagall asks, how did he survive? And Dumbledore's like, we can only guess. Obviously, you know it was Lily's sacrifice because you're taking him to Petunia to perform a charm to seal that to keep him safe.
But if he also doesn't think that Voldemort's dead, he probably doesn't want it getting around how to get through that loophole. Because even I think that,
like, I can understand not telling Hagrid. Blabbermouth. Yeah. Why wouldn't you tell McGonagall? Like, McGonagall is. But I would think of McGonagall as kind of like his right hand.
Maybe this goes back to what Aberforth was saying. Secrets and lies. He learned them at our mother's hands. And I think but even then,
it's very telling about the character of Dumbledore. Even this up front, like their secrets already.
Yeah, and like I know that magic is going to be one of those things that is going to be the escape clause to so many of this. But when he fits this all in a letter,
I know. How long is that letter?
Because he's like, I can't tell you, but I'm going to tell this Muggle that her sister died, and the only way that he can survive is because the protection under the roof. What's to stop her? I mean, granted, her personality, but
she ain't gonna tell anybody.
Let's just say, if she just decided, you know what, I'm so angry with the wizards for doing this to me, I'm going to blab all their secrets. And death to wizards or whatever, and then
that the next puts her in a position where she'd have to interact with them, and she don't want to.
That's true, but still, the risk is there.
But like, a letter.
Because he doesn't know Petunia. He doesn't know who what her personality type, unless he's been keeping tabs on her all these years. But
which I think he has.
For what purpose? He doesn't know Harry's going to be anything until the prophecy, which comes out just a few months before.
But Petunia, I think he had an interest in Petunia because she wrote to him.
Maybe, but then maybe you would think it would be kind if he did find out that she lived in a neighborhood where there was a squib, that maybe he could introduce them and she could get a little bit of interaction through somebody who's magical, or from the magical world who has no magical abilities, and so they could just discuss magical things together without magical abilities. I don't know. How do they keep it secret in any other Muggle-born family when they have a witch? Is there like some sort of spell that's bound on the letters that they send them from Hogwarts that they just can't?
I don't know, because you would think like there's a lot of Muggle-borns.
Yeah.
And how do you explain away, like, where'd your kid go? And I know boarding school is more, we've discussed this, like boarding school is a little more of a thing there. But do you just say, oh, they went to some boarding school in Scotland? Because that's cool.
St. Brutus's?
Yeah, right. You explain it away with something.
Right.
You make up a lie. Or do you say they're going to this special school for their abilities? It's called Hogwarts, and just leave it at that.
Yeah.
People usually, unless it's close family, they're not. Most people are like, oh, okay, your kid's in school.
Yeah, I think I wrote a lot on here about how much I can't believe that he can fit all that stuff into a letter.
Yeah. And McGonagall's like, a letter? You really think you're going to explain this all in a letter?
Right, because he has to mention Voldemort because Petunia mentions him later. Like,
Petunia has to know. And I get the impression, and I could be very mistaken in this, that Dumbledore was close with Lily and James. So he probably knows about Lily's sister through Lily.
That's true. Lily was probably talking about her family.
I talk about my sisters all the time.
Yeah. This is one of the things, like, when he's all like, I'm going to do this with a letter. And then he's like, well, let's get this over with. That's that. Let's join the celebration. Like,
it was very cold, but that is another facet of Dumbledore is he can be cold.
Is he trying to distance himself because he well, but I don't think he knows yet that he has to kind of raise Harry for slaughter.
I don't know, but he does have this, like, he tries to protect himself from that attachment. And I think largely because attachments haven't served Dumbledore well. And this is, we're getting into that little bit of a psychoanalyst kind of thing.
Yeah.
He does not have a strong family connection. He does not have a strong, there's never been another romantic interest. There's people that perform duties for him. And you can almost put him, as far as attachments are concerned, in that same boat with Voldemort. Like, he does not have confidants.
That's true. He has followers.
He does. And that relationship with Harry, he tries to keep that at a distance most of the time.
Because I mean, like, you can even,
but he still has a heart.
You got like Voldemort at the top of the Death Eaters, and then you got Dumbledore over here at the top of the Order, and then you got Harry over here at the top of Dumbledore's army, which is kind of a sub thing of the Order in itself.
But with Harry, you have very close relationships all over the place, like him and Ron.
Because I was gonna say it is kind of like when Harry runs it is like him, Ron, Hermione, and then he just kind of breaks away to sometimes, but
he relies very heavily on his relationships, and that's how he gets through. I mean, Harry wouldn't have got very far. He wouldn't have got very far without the other two.
No, he wouldn't.
You'd have died in the first book without Hermione.
Yeah, and like so that's the thing is like Dumbledore's putting all of his eggs in this Harry basket, but I mean, is he doing anything to kind of nudge? Like, if he wouldn't have gotten Hermione and Ron, I mean, he could have easily stepped up with Draco.
And he could have, if he had not had that interaction with Ron on the train.
Yeah.
Or even Hagrid. And I think I think Dumbledore pushes that agenda with Hagrid.
Yes.
But if he had not had that hint, although I think Harry is a decent judge of character, because his interactions with Malfoy and Madame Malkins is like, you remind me of Dudley. Yeah. And I don't like that. And he picks somebody, like when he bonds with Ron, like somebody that doesn't have a lot. Mm-hmm. He just, and I know that interaction is chance, but sometimes I get a little frustrated. It's like, how did that just happen? But if you look at your own life, like, how did you happen to become friends with so-and-so? Or how did, chance encounters? The person I've been friends with probably some of the longest, we literally walked into each other the first day of third grade. Literally, like your first day of school, you got all your like stuff and you're walking and you're trying to get to your locker, and we shared a locker, and I was coming one way, she was coming another, and we knocked each other over. As friends. So life is about chance.
Yeah. Like Hagrid, I mean, he's a kind of over emotional anyway. Mm-hmm. In general, like he feels deeply, and I love that. Mm-hmm. And
especially because you look at him and it's like uber masculine.
Yeah. But his heart is so big, mm-hmm. and he just goes and like he's crying for Harry, he's wailing, and now she's shushing him. That motorbike already came, and then it leaves, and it roars when it leaves too. And I mean, they're just having a normal conversation. It doesn't say that they're whispering.
No.
So I mean, what's it if somebody lets out a cry, a sob? Like, who's gonna notice that?
Exactly.
If they're not awake at this point.
With that, Muggles see what they want to see and hear what they want to hear. True. They say that with the night bus. Like, don't the Muggles like?
They don't. See
how do they not notice this giant triple decker? Well, they don't look properly, do they?
Yeah.
So, I mean, I guess that there's that,
but then you got Uncle Vernon, who's like who doesn't have an imagination, and he clearly sees that cat reading a map.
So they see. I wonder if McGonagall was messing with him, because she has that like impish streak to her.
Yeah, every once in a while she does. Yeah,
you see it comes out best in book 5 when she's against Umbridge.
Yes,
But
I think we see a little bit of that later in here too, when she gets wood for the seeker.
Yeah.
So maybe she was trying to take his measure by showing him a little glimpse.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe. That is a cat thing too, to kind of just be like that playful but mean.
Yes, like here, let me put my dead mouse in your book bag.
Yeah. So leaving, I'm kind of surprised that Hagrid's okay with this, but he might leave before he actually does it. I don't remember right off the top of my head when he hands over Harry in the blankets, and then they just leave the blankets on the doorstep. Like,
I've had several small children in my house. I don't know that I could wrap up a baby and set it on somebody's step and it would still be there the next morning.
Right.
They
like
move.
No, not waking up, not crying. No, he slept through the night. At what time did it say what time she gets the milk in the morning the next day?
I'm going to assume early, but they said a couple of hours. But still, like, he's laying outside in November.
Yeah, with just some blankets on, and maybe a spell. Again,
I think magic is going to be your out.
Magic is the out, of course.
I thought the same thing. Like, whew, the mom in me was like, "What are you doing? The baby's going to get hurt."
Yeah, I know. It's okay. We magicked him. And then again, yeah, as like I think we mentioned this earlier, but people meeting in secret all over the world, celebrating. But why in secret? Go to your common, like, wizarding
Cauldron.
Yeah, Diagon Alley. Yeah, something. They have those places. Then again, when they meet for like the World Cup, they can't all get together for.
There's limited space.
There's got to be some space. It's not like everybody's going to go out into the bar.
I'm not.
I don't know though. I haven't been.
I can't see Molly Weasley going out to celebrate.
Right. She's got a bunch of kids at home to look after.
She's either pregnant with or has had Ginny. So she's got 6 children, 1 on the way, or 7 children. I don't know where we're falling in the timeline.
Right. Well, because Ron's going to have to be about a year old. So
yeah, Ron's over a year old because he was born in March.
Yeah. And Ginny's about a year younger. So
yeah, Ginny's
they're
really close together.
Yeah.
We might want to have a birthday chart so we can accurately.
Yeah, we should. I feel like I don't know enough of their birthdays to like.
I know Hermione's
without
in
having
September.
without having to like Google them all. Because do we even celebrate Hermione's birthday at all in the books?
Her birthday's in September, she says in book 3.
Okay.
So she's one of the oldest kids in the class, whereas Harry's one of the youngest. And again, they're 11. It doesn't make a big difference, but I was thinking, like, I think about the developmental progression and how different, like how that can affect.
Right. So that could be why Hermione's even more, even smarter and more pompous than everybody else. So
I love
she's
Hermione.
Almost an extra year older than everybody.
Exactly. And honestly, like, I relate so much to Hermione. Mm-hmm. That is how I approach school. I am that, I know kind of person. And that's always, I get that want to do well. And being from a family, like I watched my mom struggle through school with kids and getting the opportunity to go to college, I threw myself into it 110%. And I can imagine that's how she feels about being so grateful to be in that wizarding world.
Yeah.
Well, that takes me to the end of my notes.
Me too. As far as the book. So, but I did listen to, well, I guess I just wrote down like every character that was mentioned, mm-hmm. just because she does like to do that offhanded one thing and then it's going to come back later. So, we got Dumbledore McGonagall, Vernon Petunia Dudley, Daedalus Diggle.
I love Daedalus. I wonder if that's who hugged Vernon.
I always imagine it is.
I do too.
I always imagine it is.
But he's not wearing his top hat.
Right. Hagrid, Sirius, Lily, James, and Harry are all mentioned. And then the places, number 4, Privet Drive, of course, Grunnings, and Godric's Hollow, mentioned once, and then not mentioned again until book 6. And the only reason I even like make a note is because I remember reading the 6th book and Harry being like, I want to go to Godric's Hollow. Like, what the hell is Godric's Hollow? And I did Google it, and somebody's like, yeah, they mentioned that in book 1. But Harry
really don't mention it in all that intervening space.
I don't think so.
That's something I guess we'll have to keep a look at.
Because I'm like, how does Harry know that he grew up in Godric's Hollow? Why would
do they mention it in book 3?
In the top of my head, it's not coming to me.
When Fudge is telling the story in the 3 broomsticks where Harry's hidden behind the Christmas tree. Maybe. I don't know for sure.
Maybe. To me, it's still weird that Harry being, I don't want to say it, well, yeah, he is an orphan just because he doesn't grow up in an orphanage, but but being an orphan, like, that's one of those things, like, you want to connect to your parents, you want to connect to that house, like, you want to go back there. And he doesn't mention anything, even if it was mentioned in the 3rd book, till another 3 years later. So, but yeah, to me, it's just like Godric's Hollow just came out of nowhere, and I'm like, because I only remember it from book 6 because I couldn't. I'm like, where is that?
But even if it is, and I don't have book 3s out in the living room, but if they did, that's again only one other time in the series. So I don't recall it being mentioned.
Yeah. So I also listened to the audiobook, and my audiobook is the Stephen Fry's Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone. So there were a few just kind of random differences, like obviously Sorcerer's Stone versus Philosopher's Stone. They just randomly changed some words to be British terms. Like in the Sorcerer's Stone, they still use the term garden, which whenever I read this in, because this is the American version, I always thought garden. And why didn't they change it to lawn or yard? Because that's one thing that does not come on.
It doesn't compute.
We have a word for garden, and it's flowers and fruits and vegetables.
My vegetable garden.
Not yard, not lawn. Like,
I kind of, the first time that really triggered for me, because I never paid much attention to that, was in the when they're like, she lived in the country with a large garden, and I'm like, I don't see Aunt Marge gardening. Yeah,
I don't remember which book or movie it was in, but somebody mentioned that they were doing, I think they were playing Quidditch in the garden. And I was like, what? So it took me that far to realize that they were not, that these people all didn't have gardens. But they all have yards. But yeah, that's not a change. That stays the same. So that was one thing that just was weird to me. But yet these are the weirdest changes, because why change them? When Vernon goes to the bakery in the book, in the audiobook, he goes to the baker's, like, opposite. Like, okay, like, why make that change? Bakers and bakery, I feel like that's Dudley's word. His first word is shan't, not won't.
More proper.
And I didn't write this down, which was which, but when Vernon is watching the news, it's newscaster versus news reader. Like, there's such small changes. The lemon drops are sherbet lemons, which I think they kept in the movies.
Yes.
It's sherbet lemon in the movie. It's also sherbet lemon in Philosopher's Stone. Trash can versus dustbin, crowd versus lot.
Which is interesting because in book 4, Moody's dustbins move around.
Yeah.
Although I don't know, that's my audiobook, but I have the Jim Dale version, so I don't know.
That'll be interesting to see what in the reading. Also, in the Hagrid's motorcycle is referred to as a motorbike.
Still in the book, it's a motorbike.
In my book, it says motorcycle.
Maybe I'm thinking of the audiobook.
Does your Jim Dale, does he read Philosopher's Stone or Sorcerer's Stone?
He reads Sorcerer's Stone, so I don't know.
Huh. Okay.
Hang on. I'm looking. I'm gonna check.
At one point, he's instead of handy, he says useful. Like, I mean, they're so like that'll come in handy. That'll come in useful. They're such. At one point, the word next was just added or taken out, and then there are some that I just don't know if it was his dialect. As far as being in or on Privet Drive, he switched that and which once, toward and towards, had found and found.
I love that it's the
every
same language but completely different. It makes me love languages.
But I love the way Stephen Fry reads. I took notes on it. Like, he's calming, he's got subtle voice changes so that it's not like really distracting. But it's distinct enough that if you listen to it enough, you get to tell who's who when they're talking.
I guess you're right.
Then just like
cycle in the book.
Yeah. So then there's just like mild differences that like aren't necessarily in the book, but might be like part of Stephen Fry's interpretation from the character's voice and tone based on the context. So like when he's talking, it might not say "oh" in the book, but you'll hear him like he might say a soft "oh" or stutter a little bit, even if it's not necessarily noted. So, and like he hits the italicized words like great. Hagrid's accent is brilliant. The only thing that I read differently in my head is like on page 13 when McGonagall was talking with Dumbledore about, him being the only, like before he can walk and talk, and McGonagall sentences are all highlighted, like they all have an exclamation point. And in my head, it's like, it's a more punch delivery and with more hyped anxiety than he delivers in the audiobook. But aside from that, like I love listening to him and I listen to it all the time.
Yeah. My audiobooks play pretty much constantly at night. Anti-anxiety.
Yeah. I put them on to go to sleep.
I put them on to go to sleep. And then when I wake up in the middle of the night to feed the baby, or just because I'm awake, because my mind's going 100 miles an hour, I can tune into the story. And it's something for me to connect to that I know I could open up the book, any page, start reading, know exactly what happened before and what's going to happen next. It's very calming.
All right. So sorry.
I think
are we wrapping up now then?
I think we wrap up. I think we're good.
Okay. All right. So next week we'll be reading chapter 2, what is the title of chapter 2?
The Vanishing Glass.
The Vanishing Glass. All right.
Good stuff. We start to get some magic.
So if you guys out there in the world want to read along with us or read on your own time and then join us for the recap, and because these are our perspectives, let us know what your perspective of what's going on in the chapters are in the comments. If you like it, give us a like, share, subscribe, all that kind of stuff. That's all I got. You got anything else, Terry?
No, I think I'm excited to do chapter 2.
Yay, me too. I'm excited that we're doing this. So we just keep it going.
Yep.
All the books, one chapter at a time. I don't know if I told you this yet, but on Facebook, I started playing around with how to, because people do gaming on Facebook. And if you're watching this on YouTube, we have a Facebook channel. If you're watching this on Facebook, we have a YouTube channel. But on Facebook, I started doing some gaming with Harry Potter games. I did some tutorials because I was very unsure how to do this. So I just set up my characters so far, but I can actually play Hogwarts Mystery and like there's like a puzzle one, which is kind of like the Candy Crush where you just mix things. But Hogwarts Mystery is pretty cool because it's actually about the cursed vaults. Thank you guys for watching. Like, share, subscribe, all that kind of crap. So we'll see you next week with chapter 2 of Sorcerer's Stone.